donuts and coffee, so I'm sure they just find what's available, right?
Yeah.
Whatever's available, and I know one time they brought in just muffins, a bunch of blueberry muffins and kind of weird, and I don't think anybody like ate them, or maybe one, and so I think they stopped doing muffins after that, so then they brought donuts back. I'm much more happier with donuts than muffins, so.
You got a Valentine.
Yes, I wore red. For Valentine's. I was trying to find like a pin or something with a heart for Valentine's, but my wife's out of town and I couldn't find anything. I know she would know where they are, but I couldn't find any, so I wore red.
Well, that's interesting, but Mr. Mayor, I was referring to your donut.
Oh, well, yes, and I have a Valentine's donut on top of it. Good eye. Oh, and you got it too. Is all of them like that over there? Oh, there's a whole bunch of pictures.
This one definitely was not.
That one was not, yes. And Les went for the standard right there. I don't know if everybody has met everybody before, but maybe just before we start, just kind of quick introductions. Denny the mayor.
Libby, I came with him.
Dennis Libby.
Bob Erickson. Les Dalton. And John Quicken.
In fact, me and Les we were running into each other at the grocery store the other day as I was getting all my stuff organized for my wife to come home.
Ready for today.
I was ready for today. Yeah, I got all the good accoutrements for Valentine's Day for my wife who gets home from a work trip tonight. So, but anyways, we've had thanks for coming. You know, we do these every month, and sometimes I see people come and go, and some people stay the whole time. But if there's anything anybody likes to talk about, otherwise I can opine on lots of great stuff that's going on in terms of activities that are going on this year that people sometimes they're not aware of, like the grand opening for the new name for the golf course, and it's the 100-year anniversary, and that's going to happen in June. I think it's the week of June 17th, if I remember right. So the entire week we're going to be having festivities, probably food trucks and just celebrations for the 100-year anniversary on top of renaming it. Because a lot of people don't know unless they've kind of read about it, is it used to be an apple orchard way back in the day. So that's why it's Orono Orchard Road over there, and there used to be the Orono Orchard Golf Course. That's because that, and so I can't remember how long ago when they just changed it to Orono Golf Course, and we're kind of bringing back the history with the name and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool, you know, because we have a lot of history in this city in terms of the names of little towns and how it got incorporated, and Chief Orono. I don't know if everybody knows we have a sister city in Maine. That's the original Orono. I visited there, God, it's got to be 5 or 6 years ago now. We had a family trip going up to Maine to go, visit the lobster areas and Bar Harbor and do all that kind of stuff just for educational and a fun trip. And because Orono, Maine was on the road from there to Boston to go home, I called them up and said, hey, I'm going to stop by tomorrow. Is that okay? And it was like they were going to almost like throw a parade for me. They'd never had anybody ever stop by from here before, even though we're sister cities. And so I went there, and they gave me a whole tour of their fire department and police department, got pictures, went into their kind of city hall like this, and it's like 3 times as big. And I got to meet, they don't have a mayor. They have like a chairman, and the chairman doesn't get a vote. And then they have like 8 council members. So it's a little different structure that they got going on there. But they gave me a whole bunch of pins and coins, and I brought it here and gave it to the city, and so they have a little, I think a lobby, an accoutrement of showing all the stuff from Orono, Maine. And so it's one of those deals, if I get up there again, I always want to stop in, just because it's, people don't realize that we're not the only Orono, but we're the second Orono. So fun history for sure.
Speaking of the golf course, I volunteered several years ago at the bequest of the park commissioner because I have a background in arts and entertainment and the music industry, and he wanted to know if I could assist in having a live performance entertainment as a golfer appreciation function, which went extremely well.
Yeah, I remember attending.
Yes, and I remember that I had the good fortune of being able to introduce to the city someone who I had met, who now has become a very prominent figure in sports event national anthem singing, believe it or not. This young lady by the name of Dana Cohn was well known in kind of the nightclub circuits here, playing as a solo entertainer. And I thought she'd be a great candidate because the idea was to have music, entertainment, outdoors,
Right.
but not overtly loud to disrupt the neighborhood. And she came in and did a wonderful job. People obviously enjoyed themselves, and I loved your idea using a local vendor for food to come out, and they made burgers
And the burgers were fabulous, yeah.
It was, and it was well attended. A lot of the golfers tended to stay there, I think, a lot longer. We got some comments that it was a positive thing, and, you know, more of those types of things can be done. But I haven't talked to the park commissioner. Do you know if in the formation of the event that's coming up for the 100-year, if they're gonna have any live entertainment?
You know, that's a good question. I do not know the answer to that.
I should probably just
I
approach.
saw Josh leaving as I was coming in,
Yeah,
so he's not here right now, but that's a great question. I'm not sure exactly all the festivities they've got planned yet.
Yeah.
But I know, I'm assuming we're gonna start putting out stuff as it gets closer and we have all the days organized and what it's gonna be. We're gonna start putting out all those to the list, the Orono, you know, on our website and on the Facebook site and the listserv and everything. We start letting everybody know the schedule of events.
Well, I'm sure you wouldn't really know this either, but one of the real positive parts of the long-term plan and the master plan was the construction of the pavilion. Because when we did this outdoors in the small patio area there, you know, it really didn't really leave much left. I mean, there was limited seating,
Yeah.
but we had more people that could have sat down and stayed and enjoyed themselves, but they couldn't because there were just a few tables and a few
Right.
chairs. The other thing was that they had to use a temporary shelter, which was basically, you know, one of the quick up type awning
Right,
things.
yeah.
And it was okay, you know, from sheltering the artists that came and sang from the sun and the elements. But boy, it got a little windy, you know, and that thing was. So after having seen the positive nature of the pavilion that was constructed at Big Island in that park, of course, which had to be an entirely different type of element because of the vandalism,
Right.
historic vandalism out there. This was an impervious, solid concrete structure. But I guess my point is that, and you probably missed out on this because I think you were speaking to some other people on Monday after the meeting. They were members of, no, I'm sorry, I have to correct myself. I went for 3 meetings last week. Park Commission had a meeting.
Yes. Yeah.
Which was very productive. And members of the donations to build the pavilion, our
From the
Lions
Lions.
Club members were here, and I was party to that conversation. And kind of in answer to some of the questions that one of your city council members had at the city council meeting about the architectural nature of the pavilion. You know, right now it's kind of a place marker. The design is just a place marker concept, like the pavilion on Big Island was a concept until it became something that was vested and approved and built. But I thought it was very interesting and is enlightening to share with you that the Lions are very fully aware of and have studied the architectural uniqueness of the clubhouse. The clubhouse, you know, known to many, I'm not bringing anything new, was a kit home bought from Sears.
Which is an amazing
and
story.
built by the original owners of the property.
Did you know that, Les?
No, I did not.
There was a kit from Sears catalog back, obviously, a very long time ago, which is just amazing.
Which would kind of denote to some degree that maybe it was something less than structurally sound, but it's actually totally to the contrary. The fit and finish of the materials and everything that Sears offered as a kit home. And this is a quite compact, relatively small architectural style compared to some of the big 2-story houses that came delivered by truck on site, and then they had a series of contractors to build it. But my point is that the Lions and the members that represented them here at the Park Commission meeting made it quite evident that they're very sensitive to the fact that there's unique architectural style and relevant period architecture. It's really kind of an Art Deco. It was built mid-1920s, same year, I think 1926, that the house that I grew up in was built, and that they are going to be very observant of coming up with designs and ideas.
Well, not only that, originally, as a placeholder in the master plan, you know, we obviously had built the one out of Big Island, which was heavy steel, a very different issue because of all the vandalism. I'm not sure if you're familiar with all the vandalism over the years that we had out there, that they burned down a lot of stuff, they destroyed the bathrooms. We had to make everything very, very permanent that you couldn't destroy. Versus like here in the golf course, you know, it's out in the open, it's in a residential neighborhood, it's not on an island that you can't see. So we weren't quite as worried of needing to do just some metal weird structure. Because they really wanted to do something that their preference was to make it blend in and look like it had been there the entire time, like the clubhouse did. I mean, that's what they wanted. So they kind of, because originally we were just thinking, oh, we'll just do some big metal, you know, kind of gig, and they was like, God, that didn't sound as much fun, because they're golfers, they know the history, so they're the ones who said we really would like it to be more matching to the clubhouse, and we were like, that makes total sense. So it'll be interesting for them to come in, and the drawing that they, you know, was up there was just more of a placeholder drawing. It wasn't, and I know someone had mentioned that Gordy, who was on the Parks Commission, had sent a picture of a kind of more of a wooden structure that looks like the clubhouse, and I was like, God, yeah, that's beautiful, you know. So that's the intent, and that's what will come. And they'll probably have many different designs, I'm sure, because they're going to be working with Josh in terms of the design and all that kind of stuff as well.
I think you've talked about this before. When is this going to be started? They're planning stages.
Yeah, once they get their plan organized and everything, it'll probably come to the council, I would say probably in March.
Oh.
One of the meetings in March. And they said it'll only take them probably 2 or 3 weeks to complete the project.
Oh.
So, because the goal was to have it ready
For
for the June 15th thing, and so we have this, you know, fabulous pavilion, you know, in use already for everything going on. Because definitely, I've been out there for a few different events, and you know, the deck is beautiful because we expanded the deck many years ago, so you could have more seating. But boy, I tell you, when that sun is out and it's 90 degrees, you need something. You need something, that's for sure, because it just gets just too hot, you know. So that'll be, and it's close enough to the clubhouse where if you need, you know, stuff, if you need to bring food in back and forth for whatever event you got going on, you're close to the clubhouse, which is nice, and all that stuff too.
Well, and if I remember, in the master plan, regardless of what the finished structure is, that it's left open without any permanent seating. So in the event, say, and again, this is a question to you, if there's an elective to have live entertainment or have, you know, some other function, just tables and seating for people to picnic, for that being left open rather than putting these impervious giant benches that were ADA compliant, like was put out of Big Island.
Right.
This would be left open for flexibility for a variety of different types of uses. So
you're exactly right.
That'll continue to pass through as they actually get into the building.
Yeah, so yeah, because if all of a sudden you wanted to have let's say you wanted to get married there, and you could put seats, you know, kind of like here at the council where you have just seats, you know, rows of seats, you could do that. So they could do lots of different things. So and because we want to make it as flexible as possible, so it'll just be a wide open structure, you know, with the poles around for support, but it'll be able to use for any kind of events, or people just golfing and want to hang out and sit in the shade and, you know, get whatever kind of food or drinks that they got at the clubhouse, and if they don't want to be on the deck and they want to just sit and overlook the golf course, they can do that too. So it gives people different options, which would be nice. And it's been on the master plan for a long time for something. And so actually, Public Works actually went out and previously had graded that whole area just as a flat area, knowing that we're going to use it at some point. It could be just a tent. You know, if somebody wanted to just go put a temporary tent up there, you could do that. But this will just give it permanent so people can plan on knowing that they get shelter, even if it's raining. You know, in fact, one guy had talked to me about, you know, most golf courses also have shelters, we maybe want to call them fallout shelter. But because if there's a storm and you're out at the back end of the golf course, you know, the only shelter you got is at hole number 1 because that's where the clubhouse is. That, you know, you may want to think about potentially having some storm shelter kind of stuff. If all of a sudden it starts lightning, they got somewhere they can hide, or just from the elements if it's raining, pouring rain in here, you know, 500 yards from the clubhouse, you got somewhere you can kind of wait it out a little bit. So those were good ideas too. So I told them to, you know, again, go to the Parks Commission, because they're the ones who are kind of organizing all this stuff as a long-term master plan. But that's, you know, that's what you got to do as a city, is have these long-term visions of your parks, and little by little, you can't just do them all at once. Sometimes they take money. It takes time to raise money or get money or budget money and all those kind of things. So, but without having some kind of plan in place that you can project these things, it's hard to go out and say, hey, can I go raise some money for something, you know? But once you have a plan in place, which is why we approved the pickleball as a master plan. So then, now that we've got that in place, now they know if they go raise the money, and we have something to approve, because it's really more of a money raising thing at this point. So, and a final design and all that stuff.
I'm not sure if you were made aware of the fact that the 501c3, which I happen to sit on as a board member, has recruited another board member.
Oh, awesome.
Who is a extraordinarily diverse individual who has spent years with 501c3 capital funding, capital campaigns, but has currently, because of her company's involvement with Dialysis, has become a board member of the Kidney Foundation for the state of Minnesota. So this is a person of significant experience that brings to the table a lot of skill sets that will aid the 501c3 in being able to generate capital campaigns.
Oh, that's
so
amazing.
it takes the burden of the public cost away significantly. And you may or may not know this already, but there already is a passionate donor for pickleball.
Oh, great. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's
we
awesome.
have somebody that is going to donate a significant amount of money, that's passionate for the game, but they're also passionate about the park
That's
system.
amazing.
And there are protocols and proprieties involved with having a 501c3. So as these philanthropic funds come in, they're appropriately targeted and
Right.
moved.
Unless, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 501c3, but when we did the Big Island project, which was obviously a number of years ago, we needed like $1 million. And so at the time, I, with the help of Libby and a few other people, said, let's create a 501c3 organization to be able to collect funds so people can have a donation vehicle. And then the mission of that 501c3 would then be to, at that time, it was just to help Big Island. It was just specifically for that project. And so, because we were always talking about, and we've always been working on public-private partnerships on all the parks for many, many, many years, and people donating stuff, and city getting matching grants, all these different things. And so we were able to get money from, I think we raised about $120,000 from private donors that then had a vehicle for a donation, and then we got matching funds from that from a grant, so that 120 turned into 240, and then we had some city funds, I think maybe it was 180, and then we got some bonding dollars from the state. I think we got $500,000 or $600,000 from the state. So we had all this, multiple avenues of raising all this money, because again, we had to have $1 million to do it, right? And so once we completed that project, which was amazing, a whole bunch of people who were kind of dedicated for that project said, okay, we're done. I don't need to be on this 501c3 anymore. And so Dennis decided to take the chairmanship, and we recruited a couple other people, and we redirected the whole focus of the 501c3, renamed it, because it was called the Big Island Legacy Funds, and we just moved it and said, let's just rename it to the Orono Parks Legacy, because it's just, it was for all of Orono Parks now, so we have a vehicle. And so like 2 years ago, I think when we did the tree lighting event, BenGoodwin's family donated, I think $8,000 for the whole cost of but he did it again to the 501c3, so he got a donation, and then the 501c3 then basically just funneled it, give it to the city.
So you can donate and specify what you want
Oh, absolutely,
to go to.
absolutely.
Some organizations really do prefer that, and that was why it was kind of convenient when the reality set in that we had a really good methodology of being able to offset public costs by these philanthropic donations. We hated to kind of lose it because we were so, tunnel vision focused on the Big Island as one park. So we sought legal counsel and did everything appropriately mandated by the state and the IRS to really do essentially a name change, but carry over all the organizational skill sets and all the success story that we had into the Orono Parks Legacy. So it's set up, fully vetted, ready to go. And what's so interesting is how many of the people that are making philanthropic donations that want anonymity. They're programs from family trusts where there are people that just simply do public good. They want to give back to the community, but they don't want any fanfare. They don't want any reward. They want the quietness of knowing that the good deed has been served.
And on our Parks Commission, we have a lady, Kjersti, and I can't remember her last name. You remember, what's her last name? It's Kjersti Munson, and she moved out here, a few years ago, but, and she wanted to get on the Parks Commission because she had done a lot of stuff with the city of Minneapolis through their 50, because they also have a 501c3 for people donating land or money or whatever they want to do.
Big park
and they have a huge park system, obviously. So they have obviously a huge undertaking of dollars, and they raised lots of it. And then when she came out here, she was obviously a natural to say, come on our Parks Board, we'd love to have you. And she was amazed that we had a 501c3 already. Because she goes, I was going to suggest you need to have one of these vehicles. And she goes, and you already have one. She goes, that's amazing. And I've told a number of other cities, these are great things to do. It's not owned by the city, the 501c3. There's nobody from the city on the board. I've never been on the board. I was an advisor for the Big Island one to help them make sure that they got it set up correctly, got accountants and legal people and did it right. But if you look at their mission, it's completely dedicated, essentially for pass-through to be able to collect and give people opportunities for the donation, whether it's anonymous or not anonymous. So she got on. I think she went on the board then with the 501c3.
Yeah,
and it's been very helpful in that as well because she has so much experience in doing all this
Just to
stuff.
correct something, not that you were wrong.
Okay.
But I had a personal health issue that really put me in a position to not be prepared and be ideal. I didn't really know what was going to happen after I got a pacemaker. So what I did is I averted the chair position, and rightfully so, nominated Kjersti as chair. So I'm a board member, actively involved in capital fundraising and campaigning and organizing, but Kjersti is
She's the current chair.
She's the current
chair, yes.
Correct. So, and we have this new, I was going to say this at the city council meeting, and my 3 minutes were up, and I didn't quite get to this, but we are, and hopefully people will see this, we are actually reaching out and soliciting for other Orono residents who have an interest in becoming board members on the 501c3, which is entirely arm's length. It simply works in concert with the Parks Commission and the executive branch of the Orono City government, but we aren't independent. So if we have people who see this, or view this, or come next time, we're still looking for additional board members and people who could bring, like kind skill sets and knowledge into that relationship.
Yeah, well, that's great because I know when we were doing the Big Island thing, we had a paraplegic vet who was on the board. We had an architect on the board. Quadriplegic. And he helped with the ADA issues, and because he was a vet, because because an island, that's hard to make an ADA compliant, right? But we did. But the whole thing was geared around, vets and being able to get vets on the island so they could not just be in the boat and look at the island, because it used to be for how many decades it was you could go there as a vet and they had cabins and all that kind of stuff. You grew up here, so.
Well, and now we have facility there. There actually are toilets.
Right.
And for a long time, including during the period that the large dock system, which was purchased by the city and installed there, And the idea was to having the steamboat Minnehaha come out there. It didn't take very long for the steamboat Minnehaha operators to realize that they couldn't just drop a boatload of people off there for quite a few hours and have no facilities.
Well, no facilities, you can't do that.
The buckthorn was too dangerous to go and pee in the weeds. So I don't think that many people, because they understand, because there was very little fanfare except for a nice ribbon cutting and some television coverage, I think on Channel 5 News, but there was very little fanfare made about the enormity of the project.
And the Minnehaha is not in the water. They can't figure out how to get it in the water these days, so that's a problem. And
they have to bring everything out there. Everything has to be transported. And just the trail improvements, and everything was done under the auspices of observing the natural easement that was created as a part of the acquisition. The Minnehaha Creek Watershed District had a designated area that had to stay natural. It couldn't be affected.
And we bought a big, huge, I don't know what you call it, a big semi-trailer kind of thing that you put on the back of a big, a pod. So we brought a pod out there. So we have a pod, a heavy-duty one, because all the mowers are out there, and all the things that we need to have are actually on the island, because we have to still maintain it. And with the agreement with the state and with the Parks Commission and all the entities that got all the land given and have taken care of all that stuff, part of the agreement that we have to do is we have to maintain it. And so, and it wasn't, and we weren't doing it at the time. So getting it all fixed, we obviously then had to say, okay, we also need to make it so we can actually maintain this at the same time. So we have this pod out there with heavy duty locks. We have cameras out there.
Yeah, security is something that never existed out there. That's how the vandalism was able to take place. I mean, there was a mammoth mess hall that when the veterans camp had their regular summer camp duties with all the cabins that were there, 3 times a day the bell would ring and the veterans could come for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, for a very social aspect of being able to have this reward for their military service, and the vandals burned it to the ground.
I don't know, have you been out there to see the bathrooms and all the stuff we've done out there?
No.
The bathrooms are vault toilets. I mean, we kind of follow the Three Rivers model of the type of bathrooms, because they have obviously so many parks all over the place, and just have these indestructible bathrooms now that are all concrete. I mean, they're fully concrete bathrooms. And
impervious,
and with the state money that we were able to get, that was the hundreds of thousands that helped us enable to put the second set of bathrooms up on the I don't know what you want to call it, the overlook where we have the pavilion and the concrete tables and all that kind of stuff. But we had lots of different people that donated money. Like I said, we raised $120,000 just from private donations, and some people wanted to put their plaque on it, spend $5,000 or $25,000 and get your plaque on this stone table and that kind of stuff. So we had those opportunities, and since then, I think the parks and the city council, we have put together if somebody wanted to give money, we have a naming rights kind of issue. Here's how much, here's how you get, because we've had more interest now for people wanting to give.
It really is a destination now. For a long time, it was a beautiful nature park that really went south as far as its management and its condition, and then of course the elements of the vandalism.
Well, what's amazing is you can go there today and find the concrete pods where the cabins were. You get the post that say number 45. There's posts still there, and there's also stuff that from even the amusement park, as we had to do a lot of walking. There's the light. I almost saw these metal things that are about this high, just randomly all over the place, coming out of the ground by the shore. I'm like, what is that? He said, oh, those were the lights, the huge lights, and the bottom bases are still there. With electrical wiring that's obviously not connected to anything, but you can see the wiring and that. So where the roller coaster was, you can still see there's some of the stuff where the roller coaster was in the middle of the island up there. It's pretty amazing what you can still find up there. And we do have markers, boards that tell the story of different spots with pictures, and kind of like indestructible kind of boards too. Through a couple of the people that were on the Parks Commission for a long time, when we were doing a whole bunch of these parks, and we needed to really come up with a good storytelling about what it was and what it is, and make it so it's indestructible. Those guys kind of set the standard many years ago when we were doing all this stuff for like Saga Hill. If you've been up there, and they got the same kind of markers up there that are you could probably take a knife and try and scratch a little bit, but they're almost indestructible. And they really set a really good standard for doing that kind of stuff. So it's, like I say, we have a lot of passionate people in Orono for all the different committees, and thank God, because it takes a village to do all that stuff. And everybody has all these great expertises, and you get to tap into them and take advantage of it, which is amazing. It's the benefit of all of us.
The accuracy of these historic renderings and these placards that you see as you walk through the park are really quite extraordinary, and I have to give credit where credit is due. Rick Carter, who was our outgoing Big Island Legacy chairperson, took the initiative and the time to go out and visit with the elders of the Midwakaton Sioux community and ask them to tell the story of Big Island as it related to that culture and centuries of occupation of various different tribes, which we condensed, I shouldn't say we, but was condensed by the Three Rivers Park expert that helped with this. So we took the real story, articulated it beautifully, and if you see these panels, and if you don't have a way to get out there, contact me, because I plan, if we get our boat back in the water next summer and we have enough water, I'd be delighted to take people out there. I've already got several groups of veterans that are going to come out, who, now that we have more ADA compliant access, because all the trails were executed by Public Works with ADA compliance as much as we possibly could. Some of the elevations are a little harder, but we had, the ideal candidate to test these
was
our
quadriplegic, right?
Who, by the way, also credit where credit is due, he is the current representative for the Disabled Veterans of America for the state of Minnesota. So this guy, who's a quadriplegic Marine, flies back and forth to Washington on his own volition, his own mobility.
And I think he donated, probably upwards of $10,000 himself.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
And
guided us through compliance for the picnic tables and the seats and the chairs, so that everything is accessible to people who are other able. And
a lot of that work, that behind the scenes work that nobody ever sees or knows about, but just lots and lots of.
I didn't mean to monopolize the question and answer, but I'm so glad that you brought this up and mentioned Big Island, because it's the foundational model of how Orono Parks Legacy can move forward and function with the rest of our extensive park system. And the 501c3 was so carefully vetted, so that questions that came up during the city council meeting about the validity and the propriety, and one of the council members brought up questions that are perfectly legitimate. But I did make a statement in the public statements to clarify that this has been scrutinized and looked at. No one really takes any money. I mean, these are volunteer positions, and eventually, as the 501c3 grows, it will endeavor to offset public dollars from public contribution, because these are citizens of Orono and people who are passionate about the park system, passionate about philanthropy, and it will offset the cost to the public. So there really shouldn't be too much complaining or adversarial.
It's only for the benefit of the city and the residents. I mean, that's purely for the benefit.
That's our foundation. So I'm glad we end up talking about Big Island, but there is a commitment already that it's moving our way towards the 501c3 nonprofits way, which would be tax deductible to the contributors to support the cost of pickleball. In the master plan for pickleball, I'm sure that pickleball will, because of its popularity, will make its way into other parks other than the location that's targeted right now over by the fire station. And it's amazing. I didn't know a lot about pickleball. I'm kind of having to educate myself. I've never played, but I have so many friends that, particularly senior friends, that play pickleball here, and then they go to Arizona. They're snowbirds, and they play pickleball all day.
No, I had a friend who retired probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I never heard of pickleball, and I ran into him, we're having coffee. He said, oh, I discovered this sport and I'm traveling the country. I'm like, what is pickleball? What's pickleball? I mean, it just, and then all of a sudden, from him, I started hearing about it, and it's like, this is, my neighbor put a pickleball court in her house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so my wife and her go play all the time. It's like, this is crazy. I mean, it came out of nowhere. I never even heard of it.
Yeah, it's just the research of just understanding it. I just, go to all these websites now and Facebook sites that show all these just huge throngs of people playing, people waiting, and it's amazing, because
And it's not just a senior sport.
No.
I learned over at Excelsior, where there's a very, very rabid advocacy for pickleball within the Excelsior community. There are, younger and middle-agers and they're, they're wearing the sweatbands.
Yeah.
We used to wear like in the 60s, and they got, t-shirts with stuff on it for.
My neighbor who put it, Pat Cleveland, who put it in, her son-in-law was a very good tennis player, played college tennis stuff. Well, he is a pro pickleball player, so I don't think he makes much money, but he's sponsored, he's on a team, he travels.
I didn't know there was such a thing as a pro pickleball.
I didn't either until he got it, and it's just, I just laugh. And when I was working, I was at a job down in St. Paul, and I was eating lunch out in my truck, and there was a park behind where I was working, and they had tennis courts that they converted to pickleball courts. And this was, I was eating lunch, it's noon, and I think there were 6 courts, and they were full with people waiting to come
Yeah,
out.
that's what I hear. That's what's going on all the time too. And even at Lafayette, they never had pickleball before. And all of a sudden they've converted a whole bunch of their tennis courts to pickleball. And when I'm golfing, they're always in use. I mean, nobody's playing tennis, but they're all playing pickleball constantly. So it's there's a contingent. There's for sure.
I just laugh. I just think it's funny.
I think it's great for everybody to get out, and more things to get outside, see people, converse, all that kind of stuff. And it's good for everybody.
Well, it's really energetic. And I sat next to a couple at the city council meeting the other night, and they were obviously doing a lot of nodding and a lot of in favor of the conversation about pickleball. And the question came up, which is kind of like feeling your way around how this works and how it goes, because I think it's still kind of formative. I think the game is structured, and people who play it know how it's played, but when you can endeavor something of the magnitude of putting a 9-court facility up, there's a lot of kind of feeling your way around where you have to figure out what to do. And I'm glad that you had solicited public input, and there was quite a bit of input that had come in. But a simple question like, should it be lighted or shouldn't it be lighted? And the lady next to me, who was fairly quiet, but you could see she was agreeing to a number of the points that were brought up, she said, when they said, should it be lighted, she said, no. And I just looked over here and quietly said, why wouldn't they light it? She says, because you get too many people out there at night and increasing the number of physical injuries that people would have because you can't see as well as daylight lighting.
Have you, Brad, this is, I think, not that long ago, but I think in San Francisco, a homeowner suing the city because of the pickleball court. I've never played it, I don't know anything about it, but I guess it's the ball hitting the pad or the ball hitting the court. He said it's driving him nuts. He's can't sleep because I think it's lit and they're playing it all hours.
They're playing it all hours.
And the noise.
Yeah, well, that would worry about me as you'd be nighttiming and all that kind of stuff, which just as a city in general, we don't have lights in any of our parks, and we can't,
Well, I think Clark, they most of them closed after.
It's either dusk or a certain time that the parks are closed, you're not supposed to be in them, all that kind of stuff.
That's a safety issue as much as anything.
Well, it's a safety issue, and all of a sudden you're just inviting, if it's open, kids to go do stuff and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's good to just work with the hours that you have in general and with the light, because in summertime, I mean, God, it's 9 o'clock at night before it's, the sun goes down. So there's plenty of time, and it's up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So there's plenty of time with daylight hours for sure. And in the wintertime, it's wintertime, so you have less daylight hours, but normally you can't go out in the middle of February, play pickleball. Right now, I bet you over at Lafayette, I bet you they're playing pickleball, if I had to bet.
Yeah, it's just the growing.
Because I know people are golfing, not Lafayette, but there's courses that are open.
I wouldn't doubt it, but the growing and expanding popularity, which I don't necessarily fully understand yet because I haven't played the game, but it's unquestionable. We've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of input in endeavoring to talk to others about contributions, funding for raising capital campaign. And gosh, people are really passionate about this. They just really love the sport. Apparently it's not too terribly expensive. The stuff that you buy.
Imagine paddle on a ball, right? I mean,
it's not like a $500 set, $1,000 set of golf.
Right. Well, it's a good example too. It's like the dog park. I mean, that was donated land originally, and they wanted it to be just a park, and that was the rules. We couldn't make it into anything, but no one ever went there. And so after 15 years of it just sitting there, no one ever using it, we brought them to say, hey, what do you think about this? And they, to their credit, said, that sounds like a great idea. We'd like to see use out of the land if we can. And it's way more successful than we ever imagined.
My sister-in-law's in Plymouth, and she brings her dog out. Loves it. I think she has to come up, as a non-resident, I think she pays, or I think she had to come up here and do something.
Yeah, there's a permit to use it, whether you're a resident or non-resident. It's just more if you're not a resident.
Yeah, she loves it, except for the crime now.
Yeah, we've got cameras up there now, and that kind of stuff is too. And we just approved. God, it wasn't that long ago where we're going to expand the parking lot or do a study on expanding the parking lot, because the parking lot, coming this way, it starts going way downhill, and then the other way it's going uphill. So we got to go like this, and we got to burn a wall. So they're doing the structural stuff and engineering on that right now, because we obviously need more parking.
Well, you drive by sometimes, they're parked down the road.
I mean, there's like people that they have, it's like a huge people where they get together. It's a social thing.
Yeah.
And not only for the dogs, but the people go up there and they hang out, and it's like, there's like a groups with names now that they meet up there all the time and stuff. So it's really cool. I mean, but that's what you want in your parks, is people to use them and congregate and be social. I mean, that I think is just better overall for just the community in general. So that's always the goal, and that one was just way more successful than we ever imagined. So it's a good problem to have for sure.
In attending the park commission meeting and also the city council meeting, where I saw the rendering of the pickleball court located just to the south of Orono Lake, the station there. I drive by there an awful lot, and now especially with County Road 51 closed, that's how I get up here to come to the city hall. But I'm a little confused because I am totally ignorant and do not know anything about the memory garden. Can you tell me what that is?
It's the donation garden. That's the donation garden where, I don't know, many years ago, there's a group that Janie Delaney is part of, that they grow vegetables and they donate them. They donate a lot of the vegetables to Weekend and other food shelves, and they.
A real garden.
A real garden. It's a real garden,
Nice.
it's a donation garden is the name. And I know years ago, that was one of our big things. We wanted to make sure we supported that and everything else. So
We like that idea.
that
We
idea.
both learned about this for the first time. We've lived in Orono for 22 years.
Well, it's like if you go to Mound too, they have, I won't call it a donation garden, but they have a garden area where you can, as a resident, get a 5x5 piece or a 10x10 or whatever it happens to be, and you can go have your own little garden at this garden area. So we had talked about that potentially even with the donation garden, doing that too, but because we were big supporters and wanted to make sure they were able to continue to do all that stuff. Many years ago, we supported that, and they've done a great job. They've just done a great job, and they continue to. And so it was important to us to make sure that whatever goes on there does not impact the garden at all. Any construction project, obviously, you might, around the edges, you might have to fix kind of stuff, but that happens when you do road construction and everything else with people's yards and stuff, but there should be minimal impact, if any. It'll probably help it because we'll have parking there, there'll be sidewalks and all that kind of stuff to be able to bring stuff in and out a lot easier than it is today.
Well, that's a wonderful endeavor, and, you know, being that we are the rural community that we are, and how much agriculture there actually was here historically at one time, and a lot of people don't realize that for nearly a decade, through the 18th and 19th and early 20th century, Orono was a huge source of ginseng. That was the cash crop. And when you look at the Lake Minnetonka, which we encompass the longest linear footage of the entire Lake Minnetonka as a community, Rosander's Landing, which is often referred to because that's kind of a historic name for a whole part of Lake Minnetonka. But if you look at where County Road 15 and County Road 51 juncture, there actually was a landing there, a barge landing.
Right, I remember you had mentioned that.
Where large bundles and pallets of ginseng harvested from the woods surrounding here, and especially in the area of Tanager Hill where we live. We still have ginseng growing in our woods there.
Oh, do you?
They would harvest.
I don't know if I know what it looked like.
It's kind of interesting. It's kind of eventually it has quite large leaves and it has kind of a red bulbous. It's not a flower, but it's actually the fruit of the plant that back in the day when this was a cash crop in Orono and people harvested it like they did, you know, the apple orchards. Most of the ginseng was sold and imported overseas to China, where it was in medicinal use. But we have a long history, so this idea of having a garden kind of in the middle of Orono near Long Lake really is carrying on a tradition. I think that's colorful and really a neat idea.
And
I like it.
That's, you know, agriculture is at my house, that was an apple orchard.
Oh, was it
But
really?
it was actually across the street, so we're, you know, my neighbor Pat Cleveland, her house, that was the old Solbach, and back in the 1800s, it was actually the nuns stayed there, it was actually a hospital.
Oh, really?
So across the street, across 19 on the Forest Lakeside, that was the apple orchard. And there were some in my yard. When I was a kid, there were still 3 or 4 apple trees in my yard. But that's, I mean, Orchard Beach Place is what I live on, and so that was all apple
Oh,
farm.
really? I did not know that. Do you still have the apple trees?
No, they're gone. We planted, my wife and I planted 2, but when I was a kid, there were still, I think there were 3, you know, the little wooded area. There were still 3 trees down there when I was a little kid. I remember that. I always go down there and take apples.
Yeah, and you gotta have 2.
Yes, you have to have 2.
You have to have 2, and I know my neighbor had, they didn't care for their apples, so we'd always go get them, we'd make apple pies and do all that kind of stuff, and then we had a new neighbor come in and they got rid of them. It's like, oh, come on. But they didn't like all the bees and all the stuff that came with the apples, but I didn't realize too, once we started talking that you have to have 2 so they can pollinate and actually flower.
And actually, I think kind of what happens is, because we did plant 2, and it's like every other year. One year this one will have a lot of apples, the next year the other one will have a lot of apples. So I don't quite understand how that works. But it's fun having all those apples, I'll tell you that.
We had
Good for
plum
life.
trees in Robbinsdale.
Oh,
And
plum
what?
trees.
Oh, you had to have 2 plum trees.
Plum?
Plum.
Big ones.
Oh, that would be good, because I love plums. It's very sweet. Well, Bob, you've been quiet. How's things with you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, talking about gardening, you know, we were in Lund's, you know, a while ago, and I looked at the carrots. You can get a carrot with some green stuff out the top, you know, and stuff like that. If you want one, it's $4.99, right?
1 carrot?
So, yeah, we passed on that one.
I mean, carrots grow like crazy. We have our own little box
talk
garden that's like this size, and we grow carrots all the time, you
I
know?
think gardening is, you know, if this keeps up, the gardening is gonna get even
lot more popular.
than it is now. But,
Yeah, and they say there's no inflation. Go to the grocery store, I think you'll be, yeah.
There
I
are.
grew up in a farm where we were totally self-sufficient. We grew everything. Potatoes and,
That's when things were good, is when it was farm based. I mean, that's, you know, my family
we
from
had a
50-acre
3-acre
farm, they
garden.
raised 9 kids on 50 acres and milked cows and ate the garden. My God, the garden that we had there was unbelievable. We were never hungry.
I love living off the land because my wife loves to do all that stuff because we had pull beans that go up the trellis that we put up, and my God, we used to have baskets of pull beans. It's like after about a month and a half of eating, you're like, okay, let's eat something different tonight for vegetables, you know. But it's amazing because, you know, and you can freeze them and do all that kind of stuff. We do carrots and we do onions and we have an herb garden too. Didn't realize that some of those herbs are amazing when they're fresh like that. Because again, you go to the store, they're super expensive, but fresh, there's nothing like them. But you get some of that mint. I mean, it grows like wildfire. You can't even control it. It goes so fast. You know what I'm saying? Put a little thing like this, next thing you know, it's this big, and then it's this big, and you gotta chop it back constantly.
Well, my wife and I were talking actually not that long ago. My wife my wife's from Hamill, Corcoran area, grew up on a little farm over there. And when we were first married, you know, back in the mid '80s, there were still a lot of farms, and we did not buy produce at a grocery store. We bought everything from the local farmers. They'd have their stands out. And when we canned, we'd buy everything. We'd buy all the supplies we can. Now, you know, there's no farms left. We still go to the farmers market in Minneapolis, but I don't go down there like, you know, before you just drive your way home, you pull in the farm, buy your stuff for dinner, and
I mean,
I kind of miss those days.
We go to the mountain marketplace they have during the summer, but that's super small,
Yeah.
right? And but at least you can kind of get some of that stuff. But we've gone the same thing we do at. We bought a big, huge freezer down in our basement, and so because we buy a cow and a pig now, and once you eat the stuff direct and you get it smoked correctly from the butcher, you'll never buy meat at a store again because it tastes so different. Whether it's bacon.
I told you I just got back from Montana, so
Yep.
my stepfather just passed away, but he raised 3 head of cattle a year. And I mean, I would drive to Montana and bring home a half a beef from Montana.
I mean, it's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, until you've eaten stuff that's just direct, you just don't realize how different it tastes and everything else. It's amazing. So yeah, we're big proponents of that as well. But we do our part. And we've got a couple people too that we have now got in. So as people's kids are going out of school, you know, we don't need as much anymore. They don't need as much, and now we're sharing the cow, we're sharing the pig because we don't have, you know, they don't have, you know, 2 huge boys at their house anymore eating, you know, steaks every day because they're hungry, you know. It's just mom and dad now, and they don't. But yeah, it's fun doing that stuff. That's for sure. And we can our own jam, and once you do that too, you'll never buy jam at the store again. We do all our own salsa. In fact, we enter it the state fair every year, so we have lots of ribbons. But my wife says she won't quit until she gets first place. She said, I think 3rd and 4th. And my daughter does scones and all those kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun. You know, I never miss a meal in my house either. So.
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
It may not be one to answer in the time that we have left, but I'll try. Since we had the last one of these, which I was here, there's been a lot of propagandizing, a lot of misinformation, and a lot of what I know already are not factual innuendo and propagandizing on the internet having to do with the Long Lake and Orono Fire Department controversy. Is there anything that you could briefly, in a short amount of time, update us? Because we really kind of already know what the crap is and the exaggeration that's out there. I'd like to hear it from the mayor.
Well, anything more specific besides generalizing? Because I could go in a lot of different directions.
I wanted to give you something more specific. The legal altercations, which, you know, typically I understand the history, I know where it came from, who the plaintiff and who the defendants were. the city of Long Lake. But I remember numerous meetings between the city council of Long Lake and representatives of the city of Orono. And
For years, yes, for years, yes.
and offers back and forth, so that the feasibility or the possibility of continuing to hire Long Lake as a third-party subcontractor to deliver emergency and fire services to the city of Orono. A lot of those offers were brought to the table that, from my purview and my reading of the elements of those, were fair and reasonable. There are still people who just absolutely are obstinately insistent that there never was fair, balanced offer to the city of Long Lake, and that's why they ended up suing the city of Orono. Now, you've gone through some hearings, you've gone through some judgmental court hearings. Where do we sit now?
Well, the court stuff, we were just in court, I don't know, a week ago, week and a half ago. It was more of an evidentiary hearing, because what the legal lawsuit is about is, well, it's not about stopping Orono fire, it's not about anything like that or forcing us to work with one another. It's more about adjudicating how do we end this properly. Because part of the contract that we have is very ambiguous. I mean, we know it's ending, but there's things that some of it doesn't call out in terms of how to solve some of the stuff. And so we had made a number of offers to Long Lake over the years, just switch us in control and we'll just call it a day, but none of that seemed to work very well. So the contract is ending, and to be able to make sure we have everything in order, we had to go out and start organizing our fire department with the contract. We're bringing our services in-house. And I've said at the council a number of times, we've done it like with maintenance and public works and all that kind of stuff, bringing stuff in-house because we spend so much money and we know how to do it well, and we have the facilities, we have the staff, and we have HR, all that kind of stuff. So years ago, you know, people say, God, this is happening so quick. Well, it's actually like 3 or 4 years in the making that we've been working on this. And so in the meantime now, you know, we've bought all the equipment what we need. It's all getting delivered. We just had our brand new pumper truck got delivered last week. We already have the ladder truck. We have everything's already ordered and almost in place already. We're going to be using the old Public Works building as our temporary fire station, because it's way bigger than we need. And the new Public Works building is going to be done in April, so they're going to move over there. So it'll be empty, so we're going to use that. But the lawsuit is just really more about just, they don't like that we're hiring their firefighters. But firefighters, the history of firefighters is they can work for multiple departments. There's people already at Long Lake that work for multiple departments, and not including us in Excelsior and Mound and other places as well. But what people don't realize too is starting July 1st, when we're going to be taking over the Navarre area, which is about 30% of Orono, you would think in general that if you lose 30% of your territory, you're not going to need 30% of your firefighters anymore. Then when you lose the next 70%, you're not going to need probably 95% of your firefighters anymore, because Long Lake itself only has about 40 calls a year. And half of the calls are false alarms, so you're down to 20 calls. And the majority, I think 70% of the calls are medicals. People falling down or just something where it's a medical call. And the people, I've learned a lot of stuff about the fire department and just fire departments in general, because when the ambulance gets there and the paramedics get out, they actually run the show. They're the ones who then say, firefighters, you can leave now, we're here, we're in charge, because they're the paramedics. So what we're going to start doing too with our duty crew model, because we have a call time problem in Navarre, not because problems with firefighters, but during the day people are working, and that's when people are working, you have response problems if you're in the middle of doing something, right? And so that historically has been a problem that we found out. So that's where we're going to put the duty crew. So from 6 in the morning to 6 p.m. at night, Monday through Friday, there will be 2 or 3 or 4 part-time people just dedicated for the fire department and taking care of inspections, everything else. So When a call comes out, they're already there, and they just go right to the call. So they'll get and respond and take care of all those issues that are going on. And the duty crew or the paid on call, which is the kind of the part-time, when you call the firefighters, they come, they'll be active from 6 p.m. at night to 6 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday, and then all weekend. So they will not go to the calls that are during the daytime because we have duty crews there that are already there. And so that'll actually lessen the load for the firefighters because they'll actually have less paid on call things that they have to go to, less times they gotta leave their job, and more ability because they have to make a certain percentage of calls to be able to be eligible for the pension. And so this will make it much easier to do that as well and be trained better because the duty crew people will be essentially they're full-time firefighters, but because they're there during the day all the time, but they're all part-time workers. So it's going to be Orono, the city of Orono will be just better off with funded better and with full-time staff. We're going to take care of all the problems. It's going to be just like Public Works. We have enough machinery, plows, trucks. We have our own maintenance people. We have HR. We have finance, and we can plan for these things because we have good budgeting. We've done it for everything else. We're still growing our parks budget because I think we're at $250,000 a year right now. So I think I said on Monday, I said I think that probably needs to be maybe $450,000 a year because we have to not only maintain them, we have to upgrade stuff too as things fall apart. But we've done that for the police department. The police department, all their vehicles are constantly rotating, and I think we've got 18 vehicles. But every year we're replacing 2 or 3 because once they get to 120,000 miles. They start breaking down because these things are running. And remember, these vehicles are running 18 hours a day. But we've got that in the budget. All that stuff is in the budget. The same thing for Public Works. Plows break down, they need to be fixed or repaired or bought. You've got all that kind of stuff. The same thing's going to be with the fire department. Everything's going to be in the budget. We've already built the budget up as beautifully as it needs to be, and we do a little bit more in the future. But it'll all be beautiful, that's for sure.
And the long May contract, I remember reading the entire contract myself, it expires in 2025.
At the end of 2025, right? So the Navarre contract, the Navarre territory ends at the end of June this year. So that's why we're taking that over as of July 1st. So by the time a year and a half later, when the full contract ends, we'll already be up and running, fully vetted, all completely organized, and it'll be easy just to dovetail that other 70% right in.
Are they, I don't want to interrupt,
Yeah, right.
are the on-call, are they the
Duty crew?
duty crew, is that going to be the same 4 or 5 people? Are going to rotate on who can take it? How you know?
They'll sign up for their hours, but because I think we have, and I don't misquote me, but I think we have 9 paid on call, and we know that's how many we need to do all the hours every week. So it might not be the same guy on Tuesday, he might be Wednesday, Thursday.
That's what, because you said they have to make so many calls for their pension, so.
But that's just for the paid on call.
So that.
Just for the paid on call because they have a relief association, the paid on call guys. The guys who are part-time are employees of the City of Orono.
Oh.
And so they have an entirely different, they're through PIRA, which is the state the state pension. So that's a completely different thing versus the paid on call, where they have their own relief association and they manage their own pension because they have bylaws that they got to follow, and that's a call.
Would they like say this is Monday through Friday? Would they respond to calls Saturday and Sunday or at night?
Not the paid on call.
Not the paid
No,
on.
not the paid on call guys are just there for their specific hours. It might be, I think the fire chief said they'll have 4 or 5 hour days.
So that was kind of, okay, so that kind of comes up my question. So it is basically going to be the same people duty call 5 days a week.
It'll be, with the duty crew, it'll be the same, those same
Okay.
9 people,
That
Monday through Friday, the
was
same
my
9
question.
people,
Okay.
but only those 9 people.
Okay.
Because because they're already there,
Yep.
that supplants the need for doing the paid on call to call people during those hours.
Right, and they will not be taking after-hour calls or weekend calls,
No.
because they've already put their time, so
Yeah,
that's
they-
gonna
they-
be a
they-
paid on call.
Yep, they're hired for specifically, so, but what that does is it gives us flexibility if in the future we're finding out that we are having problems on the weekends or evenings or whatever, then we just grow the duty crew and we then shrink how much
Okay.
calls that the paid on call guys need to go to. But they're not gonna go, the actual paid on call guys, when you split the territory, it's still gonna be the same number of calls. If they're working both departments, they're not having more calls. What they'll actually have is less calls to have to worry about because we have the paid on call Monday through Friday. So they actually have less that they have to worry about getting to, more flexibility to make the amount of calls that they can go when they're already at home or at night when at home as well. So yeah, the guys that we've talked to said it's going to be much easier to make our percentages for sure. So our percentages, they said, will probably go up because we have less hours that we need to go to, and we're not working somewhere when calls come in. Like I can't make it there. You know, if you're downtown St. Paul working and for something, you can't say I'll be there in half an hour because that, you know, it's. And what's interesting too is the technology for these paid on call firefighters is amazing because when they get a call through the software that's on their phone, they can see where everybody is and who's going. So they know right away how many people have responded and are going to the call. So that's where they can look at their phone and say, okay, I see that there's a medical or a house fire or a kitchen fire or whatever, and there's 8 people who are already gone to the station or en route already to that thing. And if I've got 8 or 9 people there, I'm good. I don't need to go. So they can make the judgment decisions of whether they need to go or not if it's questionable. Because I know there's people that they'll be sitting at home and they can see, I'm in the middle of dinner time, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of people already there. We're all good. So they get to make that decision because they are paid on call. They're not employees. They're not forced to go, but they do have to make their numbers for the pension. And so that's where the paid on call guys, it varies how many people you need because you want to have at least a certain amount of response in terms of every call in general. But you know, one of the things they say is there's a lot of inefficiencies for just straight paid on call. Because if you have somebody who falls down and needs a help, well, you don't need fire engines to show up with 15 people to show up to help somebody get out of the bathtub, right? So the paid on call stuff will take care of that because they're already going to be there and we know how the numbers work. And we're not inventing the wheel or creating the wheel. The wheel already exists. We're just going to take the best practices of all of it and put it in place. It helps when you have, a large staff. We already do it with the police department. We do it with public works. And when you have HR and you have finance and you can, the chief said too, one of the new best practices that they're doing and we're going to implement too is what they call neck up, where every year they're going to require all of our firefighters to meet with a psychologist to go through the neck on up and make sure everything's still good. Because otherwise today, you don't have any requirements to do that once you've done you've joined and you 10 years later, and nobody's checking on you. So there's just new and more best practices that are constantly evolving, and being an organization that's a little bit larger and with HR departments, you get to see all this stuff and we can implement because it's important for them to be healthy too.
So if I could ask another question, and then I don't want to interrupt with along the same lines. I don't do social media. I've told you that. I don't nothing about it. But in last week's paper, there was a letter to the editor. Did you see it? What was that about?
Well,
it didn't make sense to me.
This goes back to the technology and stuff. So we were having there was a relief association meeting here with the fire chief and the 8 or 9 firefighters that are on the board as we were organizing stuff, and a call came in. They said it was a heart call. It was actually somebody fell down and they didn't feel good. It wasn't actually a heart call, but that's neither here nor there. But the guys all were here, and the chief says, if you need to go, go. They all looked at their phones and they said, there's 11 people that are already responded and are going to be there in 3 minutes. So they said, one guy said, I'm going to go. And the other guy said, yeah, no, this is covered. We don't need to go. And And so this lady who is actually the same lady who does the public relations. The fire department hired her to do public relations. They have since disengaged from her doing that at this point because of those kind of issues. So it has just created ill will, and there's more I know about the ill will that I don't want to say.
No, I read the letter, and I just thought
was,
it sounded, because I mean, I have friends that are firemen, fire people, whatever, and they gotta deal with everything. I mean, if they need it, they go. So.
Yeah, and they all looked and they knew,
Yeah.
and they said, look, we need to make 30, everybody makes 30% of their calls, and that's what you need to make. And some people, well, for example, the lady who wrote the letter, her husband didn't go to the call either. But it tells you something when the fire department has decided to disengage your services at this point, because you're not only trying to tear down, and she comes every council meeting and yells at us to begin with too. But when you're trying to tear down the firefighters that work for your city too, it's not helpful. It's not helpful at all. Yeah.
I read it. It just seemed funny to me.
Just one thing, like for information purposes, but it is a fact. The way you addressed this when you brought up your question, you mentioned seeing an article where you saw this dialogue that was in the front of the paper. What you have to realize is that some of the people that are manipulating information, exaggerating, and promoting hearsay and conjecture are quite good at making it look like it's authoritative and it's actually fact, making it look like it's in a newspaper when factually it's not. It's propagandizing. They have an agenda and it's biased.
I understand that, but it's I mean, I think I'm not going to argue that point with you, but I don't do social media. I don't do the internet. I read papers. I've always read papers, but I'm also like to think that I'm smart enough that I can ask questions.
No, I wasn't insulting your
No, I know you weren't, but I mean, I think. I mean, that's why I asked the question. I wasn't.
It's unfortunate for sure.
Just when I read something, I read newspapers. People read the internet. I read newspapers.
It was my fault. I confused your reference to how it appeared on the internet.
Right. I just when I read something that I question, I will look into it more, ask a question. I don't take what I read to be gospel.
Well, good for you.
Well, especially letters to the editor.
Yeah. So it's just.
So it wasn't even worth responding to because it was, from my perspective, just poison.
Yeah, well, I've seen that you've responded to a couple letters in the paper. I've seen that, but yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. But like I said, that's how I get my information is from the papers, and then I will question what I read.
Well, with that, I've got to get rolling too. I thank you for everybody for coming. Good to see you again. And your wife.
That took care of CC.
Awesome. So next, what's the next?